Vanakkam Dahadevan, everyone. Wonderful to be with you today. Om Sahana Bhavatu, Sahana Bhunaktu, Sahaviryam Karavavahai, Tejasvinavaditamastu, Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. And I'll share the screen here. Sharing April 23rd is today in Asia. Our first topic, Publisher's Desk for 2013, Temple as the Source of Culture. By consciously connecting the home shrine to the temple, the family sustains tradition and strengthens relationships. This Publisher's Desk was written, based upon many Hindu families expressing to me a concern about how to pass on Hindu culture to their children who are growing up in the midst of Western secular life. My suggestion is based on Gurudeva's teachings and suggests that the temple is the key to passing on culture. And a little story here. For some 25 years, from 1975 to 2001, Gurudeva was instrumental in helping temples get established. He guided 37 temples in the United States, Canada, Guadeloupe, Denmark, England, Fiji, Germany, Mauritius, New Zealand, Reunion, Russia, Sweden, and Sri Lanka, giving each community or temple an icon of God, usually Lord Ganesha, and guidance when needed. He also helped dozens more temples by sharing his global experience and understanding of community building, or by publicizing their project in Hinduism today. That's a beautiful Ganesha. Why did Gurudeva devote so much energy to helping establish the temples of organizations with no formal ties to his? He did it because of a strong conviction that. And how would you answer that question? A strong conviction that. It is the temple that perpetuates the culture. In other words, if Hindus move to a country and do not build a temple, after a few generations, Hindu culture will have been lost. Sounds pretty dire, but that was his viewpoint, which is realistic. At a satsang held in July 2000, a devotee asked Gurudeva, what's happening to Hindu culture? It seems in Bollywood actors and actresses are turning Western and encouraging everyone else to do so. Will Hindu culture or Indian culture last very long after this? Gurudeva responded, we can see in the world today that combative culture, where people do not get along, but sometimes pretend to get along when they do not get along, comes from the offices and the factories and the non-religious activities. Indian culture may be going down in India, but it is definitely coming up in the West because of the worship within the temples. It's our relationship with God, the gods, and the goddesses that establishes our relationship with men, women, and children. Very interesting idea. It's also the other way around. If you fear your parents, it's easy to start out by fearing God. Culture comes from being sensitive to other people's feelings, as we are sensitive within the temple to the feelings of the gods and the vibration emanating from the inner sanctum. So that's a very good point there, and I haven't really heard it said by anyone else. Culture comes from being sensitive to other people's feelings. as we are sensitive within the temple to the feelings of the gods and the vibration emanating from the inner sanctum. Without religion in one's life and the practice of that religion in the home shrine, in the temple, and pilgrimage once a year to a far-off place, culture quickly fails and the competitive culture comes into play. He continued, while there are many that are trying to bring the best of the West to the Far East, there are still in the West many who are trying to bring the best of the Far East into the West. As long as religion and worship and the practice of pilgrimage and all the refinements of our great religion are present, culture will be there. The Hindu temple can act as a powerful spiritual hub that radiates out Hindu culture and devotional practices into the homes of families who attend regularly, at least once a week. The process of strengthening culture can happen on a number of levels. What do you think is the most basic level in which culture is learned in the temple? Think of someone who's young. What do they learn first? The most basic is simply learning and following the many traditions and protocols associated with visiting a temple. No devout Hindu will approach the sacred home of God without proper preparation. The simple necessities include a bath, donning clean clothes, and preparing an offering tray, whether simple on a normal day or elaborate for a festival. These acts are all important parts of temple going. On arrival, we need to wash our feet and handle shoes in the specified way. Then the customary prostrations to the deities, followed by circumambulation and presenting our offerings with a loving heart. When attending puja, men and women may be required to sit on separate sides of the mandapam. At key points throughout the rites, we pray and respond in specific ways. This is when Keshana was quite young. As children follow the parents' traditional protocols, they develop an appreciation for worship and sacred objects. The idea of an object being sacred, you have to learn. Respect for elders, an understanding of the importance of physical cleanliness and mental purity, and a fondness for familial and communal devotion. And the next question, what do you think would be the next level of learning culture from the temple? We've learned all the protocols. We can do everything right. We understand respect and all. What comes next? After years of such practice, the essential character qualities, such as humility and devotion, can deepen. Devotion here means love of God. These qualities, which are present in every cultured Hindu, may not develop in an individual growing up in the West unless he or she participates in regular worship. One of the reasons is, in many schools, you're not taught humility, you're taught pride, to be proud of your intellectual achievements and look down on anyone that you can out-debate. So we need to balance that out by learning humility and devotion in the temple. Second level of the temple's influence on the home begins when a shrine is established in the home and worshipped at daily. Whenever possible, it should be a separate room, not in a cabinet or on a shelf. Such a dedicated space makes everyone living in the home think more about God, reflect more on their behavior, and be less inclined to become angry or argue as they are living in God's presence. And in Gurudeva's teachings, how can we bring some of the temple's sanctity into our home shrine? Gurudeva suggests one specific practice. Going to the temple every week can actually bring some of the temple sanctity into the home shrine. Gurudeva taught that lighting an oil lamp in the shrine room after coming home from the temple brings the temple's Shakti into your home. That devotional act brings devas who are at the temple into the home shrine, where, from the inner world, they can bless the family and protect the home. And in terms of learning culture from devotional practice, what would be the next level? We've learned the protocols, we've learned certain character qualities such as humility and devotion. What's a logical next refinement? The temple's third level of cultural influence begins when a family member, generally the father, performs regular puja in the home. In a sense, he becomes the family priest, emulating the temple priests while following a simpler, non-public liturgy known as Atmarta Puja. Such a full puja done daily steadily strengthens the home's religious vibration. So this is something that's not as much in favor now as it was one generation ago. Many more Hindu families, say 30 years ago, 40 years ago, were doing puja in the home, but it's definitely lessened even in India, but it's still there, and it's very important. It's a way of deepening the devotional experience and becoming a more cultured individual. Quite fittingly, the structure of the puja ceremony arises from the magnanimous spirit of hospitality for which Hindu culture is famous. All guests are received and treated as God, and God is no exception. So that's the simplest way to look at the puja, where instead of the guest just being a person, the guest is the deity. And we're doing the same thing we do for a physical guest. We're doing for the deity the same thing we do as for a physical guest. That's what puja is all about. We invite them in, help them get cleaned up, have a seat, feed them, entertain them. During this daily morning puja rite, family members gather in their well-appointed shrine room to honor God as the royal guest. They receive him warmly, offer a seat, serve water to quench his thirst, bathe and dress him in beautiful clothes, burn the finest incense for his enjoyment, honor him with light flowers, chanting, and offerings of food. It is an intimate personal interaction. Throughout the puja, the officiant chants sweetly to the deity in Sanskrit, describing these kindly acts and beseeching his blessings. Finally, the pujari thanks the deity for his presence, bids him farewell, and humbly apologizes for any errors he may have unknowingly committed. And the next step, yes, still one more step in Gurudeva's writings on the home shrine. What's the next level? Bringing traditional Hindu culture into the home and the lives of those in the home through devotional worship. Fourth level of temple influence on the home begins when the shrine is strong enough that we feel the main deity of the home, for example, Lord Shiva, is the head of the house. When that happens, we would never think of having a meal without first offering a portion to God. We would naturally want to always worship God, even if briefly, before leaving the home and upon returning. For Hindu culture to strengthen the home to this extent, the entire family needs to be involved. And then we get a story. It's about Singapore. So this is back in the year 2000 I wrote this, I think. One of our devotees was responsible for the Sunday morning Hinduism classes for a group in Singapore. He found that parents would commonly drop the children off, go shopping for 2 hours, return and pick them up, all the while expecting the teachers to make their children better Hindus. So that, of course, was at the Hindu Center. Though this approach works for learning the fine arts, such as dancing or playing an instrument, it does not work for Hinduism. The difference is this. For children to learn dance or music, the parents need not know how to dance or play the instrument. However, for Hinduism to be learned, it is necessary for the whole family to practice it together. This is because Hinduism is an all-encompassing spiritual way of life, forming every aspect of the family's daily and weekly routine, and not just the shrine room. Having the children study Hinduism at the temple is important, but if the parents are also involved in the study, there is much greater potential for actually augmenting Hindu culture and religious conversations in the home. In fact, some Hindu groups will not accept children into classes unless the parents also enroll in a parallel study for adults. Really strict. I like to compare Hindu temples to an electrical distribution system. On the remote Hawaiian island of Kauai, where we live, there is one main electrical generating plant with power lines to 5 distribution substations to which customers in each region are connected. This can be likened to a ray of spiritual energy coming from the celestial world's electrical plant to 5 temples, substations, each with a connection which powers the homes of devotees who worship there regularly, customers. The electricity lights up the house and empowers all sorts of appliances. The energy from the temple illumines the family's path and enlivens the culture. That's nice. Illumines and enlivens. Second topic. Answering questions sent into satsang@hindu.org. We got some more questions, so we have a question and answer here. I am asking for elaboration on tapas and austerity. Is any discipline such as higher education and austerity? Is tapas both unplanned, such as a major illness or calamity like war, earthquakes, etc., and planned, such as extreme penance set by a guru or some kind of kavadi? So this is the type of question recently I started asking Chat GPT. Gives some interesting thoughts. Sometimes it's wrong, and you have to know your subject to know when it's right and wrong, but it says interesting things. It just catches the general knowledge on the subject. So I asked Chat the question, what is the difference between austerity as a Hindu practice and non-religious austerity? That's the way I was viewing the question. It's comparing non-religious austerities at wartime, serious illness, to religious austerity, fasting, vrata at festival time. So let's see what Chat thinks is the difference. Austerity can refer to self-discipline, self-control, or self-restraint in various aspects of life, including religious or spiritual practices. In the context of Hinduism, austerity, also known as tapas, is a spiritual practice that involves self-discipline, restraint, and asceticism to purify the mind, body, and soul and attain spiritual realization or enlightenment. So that's why it's being done. Practice of austerity in Hinduism may involve various physical, mental, or ethical disciplines such as fasting, celibacy, meditation, mindfulness, charitable acts, study of sacred texts, and adherence to moral and ethical principles. It is often seen as a means of purifying the mind and body, detaching from material desires, and progressing towards spiritual liberation or union with the divine. Non-religious austerity, on the other hand, may refer to self-discipline or self-restraint practice for non-spiritual reasons, such as personal health, mental well-being, financial management, or environmental conservation. Non-religious austerity may involve practices like dieting, exercise, budgeting, reducing consumption, simplifying lifestyle, or minimizing waste, among others. While there are some similarities in the general concept of austerity between Hinduism and non-religious practices, the specific practices, motivations, and goals may differ significantly. Hindu austerity is typically rooted in spiritual beliefs, aiming at spiritual realization or enlightenment, and often guided by religious scriptures, traditions, or teachers. Non-religious austerity, on the other hand, is usually based on personal choices, secular principles, and individual motivations. Very good answer for a computer. Oh, my comment on Chet's answer is clearly for a practice to qualify as a Hindu austerity, the goal of performing it needs to relate to purifying the mind and body, detaching from material desires, and progressing towards spiritual liberation or union with the divine. So it has to do with the purpose. In other words, if two people fast for a week, one is fasting to lose weight, and one is fasting because it's a Hindu festival and going to the temple every day and praying and all. Two totally different motivations. So therefore the results, the benefits are going to be different. The one fasting to lose weight is not going to achieve spiritual benefits, not trying to. And then we get Gurudeva describes 4 aspects to the niyama of austerity. Sadhana, penance, sacrifice, tapas. And of course, as we know, the basic practices of sadhana, the daily sadhana is done in the home. This is obligatory, it includes puja, scriptural reading, and chanting of holy mantras. Other sadhanas include visiting a temple once a week, attending major festivals, pilgrimage to a far-off sacred place once a year, and fulfilling samskaras for all members of the family. Performing penance to atone for misdeeds. Penance is obligatory. We must quickly mitigate future effects of the causes we have set into action. This is done through such acts as performing 108 prostrations before the deity in the temple, walking prostrations around the temple or up a sacred path, and carrying kavadi, penance offered to Lord Murugan, Kartikeya, and the young girls in the photograph, that's from Penang. Simple form of tapas is sacrifice, giving up a cherished possession, be it money, time, or a physical object, to manifest a greater good. Sacrifice, while similar to charity, is distinguished by some form of self-denial. In other words, a very rich person who gives $1,000 doesn't give up anything really, but if that person skips a meal, then they've definitely given up more, so to speak. Examples I like are fasting for a day and giving the money saved to a Hindu institution, and saving money for charity by going on a budget vacation instead of a fancy one. So sacrifice, or actually giving up something, which is a good one to train the children in, but in a very light way. Don't give up a lot. Give up dessert one night or something. Give the money to a charity. Tapas is the most intense form of austerity and is usually performed by sannyasins or those in the sannyasa ashrama of life, which begins at age 72. Austerity should be assigned and overseen by a guru. The outer practices observed could include living in seclusion in a simple hut or cave, eating simply, not speaking, not reading magazines or newspapers, or watching television or accessing the internet. And we get Gurudeva's description. Austerity is the powerful bath of fire and bright rays of showering light that washes the soul clean of the dross of its many past lives and of the current life which have held it in the bondage of ignorance, misgiving, unforgivingness, and the self-perpetuating ignorance of the truths of the Sanatana Dharma. And our third topic, going a bit long. Thriftiness, which is the 60th character quality of our character building workbook. How would you define thriftiness? The workbook gives this definition. Thriftiness means using money carefully and not wastefully. Practice it by purchasing things I don't really need. I practice it by not purchasing things that I don't really need or that are beyond my budget. The opposite is extravagance. So it's similar to frugality. Thriftiness and frugality. Frugality is another character quality. But in the workbook, frugality relates to resources. Like we're watering the lawn and we don't let it run all night. We're not wasting water. So frugality doesn't relate to money, it relates to physical things. Whereas thriftiness relates to how we spend the money we have. Gurudeva's quote, Shiva's devotees keep a monthly budget and regulate expenses according to their revenues. They never abuse credit or indulge in extravagant buying, for they know that spending in excess of income invites misery. Definitely, that's the challenge of having credit cards. Easy to spend, and then you end up with a balance that earns interest. Comparing the actions of one who is thrifty to one who is extravagant. For a situation when shopping at the market for the weekly family foods, you, thriftiness, take your time to find the best prices and even bring coupons which give you greater savings. Extravagance, are not much of a shopper, taking the first thing off the shelf without even looking at the price. Second situation, knowing the kids should eat well at school each day. You, thriftiness, make them a wholesome and balanced bagged lunch each day. Extravagance, give them $5 each, which is costly but so much easier. Third situation, when the kids ask for more games to keep them entertained. You, thriftiness, look online for free downloads instead of spending a lot for these optional needs. Extravagance, buy whatever their little hearts desire, figuring what's money for anyway. Reflection, take a moment to identify a few ways in which you could improve in thriftiness. And the assignment for 2 weeks, when you purchase items, take a little extra time to look for the best value. And we'll stop sharing. Thank you very much. Oh.